Kesubos Daf contains one Mishnah and takes us to the end of the second parak of the Masechta. The beginning of the Daf until the Mishnah is discussing what happens when a man and a woman are divorced. Are they allowed to live near each other, or do we have concerns for inappropriate behavior? The Gemara will then talk about other issues pertaining to the resolution of their affairs. Then we get to the last Mishnah in the parak, which we'll discuss if somebody saw something as a child, is he allowed to testify to that when he later grows up and is now an adult? The Mishnah will give a list of examples of things that he could or can testify to, and the Gemara will explain them one at a time. So let's begin. We'd said that if you have a man and a woman that were married or forced to separate from each other because she was taken captive, we still allow them to live in the same chutzner, as long as they make sure not to violate Isser Yichad. So Gemara wants to know, does that apply to a case where a man and woman are divorced? They're no longer married to each other. Do we have an issue with that? So the Gemara says, on the one hand, it would seem to be that for a captive we allowed more leniencies because of, we'd seen earlier that Chazal allowed certain leniencies to help a woman who was taken captive and is therefore forbidden or potentially forbidden to her husband. So the Gemara wants to bring a proof from a Brisa. The Brisa says somebody who divorces his wife should not live in the same neighborhood as her if she is remarried. And that's because she knows his hints, his nonverbal communications, and therefore he may find ways to seduce her without having any actual verbal interactions. So therefore they better stay apart from each other. But that's only if he's married. If she's single and he's a Kohen, then you have another problem because he's not allowed to be with her because she is a divorcee, his own divorcee. So even if she never got remarried, she's also to him. So there it says she should not live with him in the same mavli, in the same alleyway, which was similar to a neighborhood but slightly smaller. It has less houses. Now, if it was in the same village, that it's a small village, how does that, what does that qualify as? So the Gemara says that was an incident that happened, and they said that a small village counts as so our Girsa is it counts as a neighborhood, and the Bach changes it to it counts as a mavli. So now the Gemara's question is, who has to move? So let's say they both want to live in the same place. Who's the one who needs to move out from the other one? So we have a brisa that says she's the one that has to move. He does not have to move unless it's her courtyard. If she owns the courtyard, obviously he's the one that needs to move. Now, the Gemara needs to explain what are we talking about and who owns what over here. So the Gemara says, obviously if it's his courtyard, you don't make him move. He owns the courtyard. So the Gemara's question then, therefore, is what happens when they both own the courtyard in partnership? Who has to move then? So the Gemara wants to say that must have been the case of this Brisa. The Brisa said, if she owns it, then she gets to stay. Obviously, if he owns it, he gets to stay. The Brisa says that all things being equal, he's the one who stays and she's the one who has to leave. It's obviously talking about where they own it as a partnership. Says Gemara, not necessarily. That could be talking about where they're both renting. If they're both renting, that's when we say that she's the one who has to go. What would be the halacha if they both own it in a partnership? We still don't know. So Gemara says we have a pasuk that says, Hine Hashem mitaltelcha taltela graver. Hashem is moving you and moving the man. So that seems to imply that the man is the one who needs to be moved. Then where it says that this shows that the movement of a man is more difficult on him than it is for a woman to move. And where it doesn't say, therefore, that means you should move the woman and not the man. Now, the Gemara goes further and we say we actually take steps to make sure that they have no interactions. This is referring to, again, a Kohen and his divorced wife. So we have a brisa that says that if she owes him money, so that could occur if she borrowed from his property, potentially even property that was hers. The brisa actually is that he borrowed from her property, that she had property that was nichsei melug that she brought into the marriage, and she's supposed to get it back the way it was, but he borrowed some of that and he needs to return it. So they should not talk to each other about the money that he owes her. Instead, they should have a go-between them. They should not communicate directly, lest it bring to conversations that are going to lead somewhere. Says Rav Sheshes, if they come to us in court, we don't listen to them because we don't want them to be communicating with each other. Rav Papa says we go a step further, we even put them in chayrim, we excommunicate them for violating this rule. They're not supposed to be communicating directly with each other. Rav Huna ben Yeshua says we even give them malchus for violating the rules. Now, it says Rav Nachman, there's a brisa in Evel Rabasi, which is Maseches Avelus, which is called Maseches Smachos, as a euphemism. The Brisa there says that that's only if they were married fully with Nisuin. Again, she's a divorcee, he's a Kohen. They were married with Nisuin. If, however, they were only engaged, they only had Erisin, they didn't have an actual Nisuin, then they don't have any close feelings to each other. So therefore, we're not afraid that something's going to happen. We allow them to communicate directly with each other. Now we have two versions of a story, which surrounds this halacha. According to the first version, an Aris and Arusa came to Rava, and Rava bar Masa was sitting before him, and Rava did not let them talk to each other. He made them have a go-between between them. So Rava bar Masa said, why did he do that? We saw in Evel Rabasi that it's only if it's Mina Nesuin that there's a problem. This is Mina Erisin. So he said, no, this is different because I could see that they seem to be very close. They are hinting at each other. They have nonverbal communication, and therefore we have to deal with this as if it was Mina Nesuin. And that's why I put a go-between between them. According to the second version, he did not put a go-between between them. And Adabar Masna asked, why did you not put one? And he answered, because it's Minha Erison, like it says in Evel Rabasi. But he said, but you could see that they do have a close relationship, therefore you should put a go-between between them. This includes the Gemara. Now we get to our next Mishnah. The Mishnah lists a number of examples where somebody is testifying about something he saw as a child. Now he's an adult, so he can testify. He's an aid, kosher, but he only saw these things as a child. So the general rule we'll have here is that he's trusted for all kinds of things as long as he's not taking money away from somebody, unless he has some other proof supporting him. If he's just establishing a certain status of something, that he's trusted for, but to actually testify to monetary issues, there he's not. So let's see the list. The Mishnah has a long list of things he is trusted for and one thing that he's not trusted for. So if he says that I recognize somebody's signature, that it's my father's signature, or it's my Rebbe's signature, or it's my brother's signature, even though he only knew them, they were only alive possibly when he was a child, he's still believed to establish that a signature is real. If he says, I saw a woman who was a psula when she got married, I saw that she went to the chuppah with a hinuma, as we've seen earlier in the Masechta, and that her hair wasn't covered, which showed that she was a psula, there he's establishing that she was a psula. Obviously, that has an effect on monetary issues. Rashi says there's a rove supporting that. That's why he's believed for that. Then he establishes that someone is a Kohen. He says, I saw that he used to leave school in order to go to the mikvah, in order to be able to eat truma. And I saw that he used to take part of the truma at the granary. Or if he said a certain area of land is a base hapras, that is, it has tuma spread around it, there was a grave there that was plowed over. Or he says that the tchum was this far, we used to go up to here on Shabbos. All these things he's trusted. However, if he says that somebody owns a piece of land here, somebody used to walk this way and he owned a walkway, or he said somebody used to have a place where he would stop during a funeral to say hespedim, there he's not trusted. He's not trusted to say that somebody owned land here. The Gemara now begins. The Gemara will explain these cases one by one, why he's trusted. And all of them we need an explanation, because the truth is this is not Eidos Deraisa. He only saw it as a katan. So first, the Gemara says that if he is testifying that a signature is real, he has one of two witnesses. The other witness has to be a gadol. Cannot be two children. Now, why do we need three cases? His father, his Rebbe, and his brother. So the Gemara says his father he sees most often. If he only said that his father is trusted, I would not know the other two. His Rebbe he has tremendous fear of, and therefore, if I only said that he's trusted in him, that he has a special honor for him. Could be that that's what he knows is a signature, but the other ones he does not. And therefore, if you have those two, I need to mention the brother. Now, the reason behind all this, the Gemara says, because establishing and validating signatures is only a rabbinic requirement. It's only D'Rabbanan. Because it's only D'Rabbanan, the Rabbanan allowed this testimony, which would otherwise be improper. They said that this is going to be enough. Next, we said he's trusted to say that a woman was a psula at the time of her wedding. Says Gemara, that's because there's a rove. Most women are psulos. Most weddings are psulos, not almonos or grushos. And therefore, if there's a dispute about it, we would paskin based on rove that she was a psula. So therefore, we're really establishing this halacha based on the rove. We really don't need his testimony. His testimony is there so that it becomes well known and it's established in court that it was actually the sugya was gone through and we established it. But it's not really relying on his testimony. Next thing was that he is trusted to say that he saw a Kohen, and he knows that he's a Kohen because he saw that he went to the mikvah and he was given truma, So the Gemara asks, maybe that doesn't prove he's a Kohen. You're going to say that he's a Kohen so that he's able to marry or that he can continue eating Truma. Maybe he was the Eved of a Kohen. And then if he ever gets freed, then he's just a Yisrael. Now he's not allowed to eat Truma anymore. He's not a Kohen at all. So how could you prove based on this that he was actually a Kohen? So the Gemara says it must be that we're holding like Rabbi Yeshua's opinion that says it's impossible for a person to send his Eved to Yeshiva. It's forbidden. You don't teach Torah to Avodim. Just like women, perhaps. So says the Gemara, that would make sense because here he picked him up from school. He said that he saw that he's picked up from yeshiva to go do tefillah. So obviously he is learning and he's eating truma, so he must not be an eved. He must be a real kohen. Says the Gemara, is it true to say that you're not allowed to teach Torah to your eved? We have a brisa that says that if somebody is an eved and his master borrows money from him or gives him certain powers as an apotropos, as a person in charge of his property, he makes him in charge of his estate, or he allows him to do business on his behalf, or he allows the Eved to put on tefillin in front of him or in front of his Rebbe, or his master, that is, or he sees him reading 3 psukim in shul. So all these things are not a proof that this is not an Eved anymore. You may think, wow, he's doing all these things just like a free man. Does that prove that he's really free? Says the Gemara, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It could just be that he learned. So the Brisa says that all these things don't prove that he's not an Eved. He could do all these things while he's still an Eved. And the Gemara's proof is here. You see that he's reading 3 psukim. So obviously his Rebbe, his master, taught him how to read. You just told me that you have halacha that you're not allowed to teach Torah to the Eved. So the Gemara says, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody taught him Torah. It just means that he learned how to read on his own. It could be he taught himself. It's not us for him to teach himself. He saw him reading 3 psukim is not a proof, not because you're allowed to teach him Torah, but because it's possible for him to learn on his own. Now, what we're talking about is that to actually teach him Torah, like a son, that's something we don't do. Now, why is a child trusted for all this? The Gemara says this is only Truma D'Rabbanan. Certain things which are not Chayiv in Truma D'Oraisa, only Truma D'Rabbanan, that's what you could trust him for. Now, the Mishnah had said that there's 2 types of testimony here. One is that he saw him picked up from school to do tefillah. Another is that he was given truma at the granary. So says the Gemara, if he's given truma at the granary, again, how do you know that he's not an Eved? You don't have anything here about Torah. That's a whole separate thing. So if he's given truma, how does that prove that he's not an Eved? So the Gemara says this must be going according to the opinion that you don't give truma to the Eved of a Kohen alone. He has to have his master with him so that people will know the fact that he's taking truma doesn't mean that he is a Kohen himself and that he's just an Eved. Says the Gemara, let's show the background for this. This is actually Machalokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't give truma to an Eved unless his master is with him, because if you see anybody taking truma, you will assume that he is a Kohen Meyuchis based on that. Therefore, you got to make sure that his master is with him so people understand that. Rabbi Yosi says, no, you're allowed to. People will not learn kahuna from the fact that somebody takes truma. It's not going to happen. Now, there are specific machlokeses in a case where you had a Kohen and an Eved of a Kohen who are mixed up. Their mothers confused them at birth, so we don't know which one's the Kohen and which one's the Eved of the Kohen. And Rabbi Yehuda therefore says he can't take truma alone. Neither of them could go take truma alone because you have to have the Kohen and the master together. Rabbi Yosi says, no, either one of them could go take truma alone because they could say, either way, I get truma. If I'm the Kohen, I'm the Kohen. If I'm the Eved of the Kohen, I also get a truma, and there's no problem of taking truma without the presence of the master there. Gemara quotes a brisa on the subject. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Yosi says, all my days I never testified about anything. And then once I did, is I testified that someone was a Kohen based on the fact that he took truma, and a terrible thing happened. They went and they made him a Kohen, but he was really just an Eved. And Gemara says, really, that happened? They gave a wrong psak? How could it be? Even the chamor, the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair, nothing bad came out. No wrong halacha comes out because of him. He never even ate truma that he wasn't supposed to, or something which was tevel, didn't have truma taken from it. So how could it be that a tzaddik himself, like Rabbi Elazar ben Yosi, brought about a wrong psak? Somebody says, no, they didn't actually, but they almost did until they figured it out. But they would have, and they were about to. So the Gemara says, what's the case there? If it's in Rabbi Yehuda's town, if it's in Rabbi Yosi's town, you shouldn't have any issues. It should be protected either way. So the Gemara says what happened was that he saw him. It was in the town of he saw him in the town of Rabbi Yossi, and in Rabbi Yossi's town they allow him to go on his own. And then the case, whether it was a Kohen or not, came in the town of Rabbi Yehuda, where they say that it is a good proof, and that's how the mistake ended up nearly happening. Next, the Mishnah had said that a child who grew up is believed to say that this area was a Beis Hapras, and that the Beis Hapras extended this far and not further. So why is he believed to say that? Why aren't we machmer that he doesn't know how far it went if his testimony is that of a child? So the Gemara says the reason is because a Beis Hapras is only an Isur D'Rabbanan. Midiraisa, there's no concern of Tumah. Now, the Beis Hapras is when you had a grave in a field that was plowed over and were concerned that it scattered the bones all over the place up to a distance of 100 amos square. If somebody says that the Beis Hapras is tahar in certain areas, then we don't have any issues because the Rabbana is the only chashash. Deraisa, we have a brisa that says, we have a statement of Yehuda Mishmuel that says, Deraisa, you could just blow the Beis Hapras out of it. Even mid Rabbana, you could just blow the Beis Hapras, you could just blow the ground in front of you, and if there is a piece of the bones there, it'll be revealed. And make sure you don't step on it. And that's because, again, it's only a suffix D'Rabbanan. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ami said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda that if a lot of people walk through a Beis Hapras, then you can even be matayer that way without blowing on it, because you assume that they stepped on any of the remnants of the grave that were there, and they crushed anything to be smaller than a shear, which is a size of a sire, the size of a barley for bones. Next, the Mishnah had said that he's trusted to say how far the Tchum Shabbos is. The Gemara says this Mishnah holds that Tchumin is a Isser D'Rabbanan, and therefore he's believed in this testimony, which is only D'Rabbanan. Now, the Mishnah said he's not trusted to say that somebody had a certain pathway through a field, or that he owned a certain area where he would stop and do his spadim during a funeral. The Gemara says the reason is because we don't take money away from people, or don't take property away from people based on the testimony of a child who grew up. The Gemara now brings a brisa, which is similar to our Mishnah. It also has a list of things that a child is believed to testify about when he grows up. Here we'll also talk about a akum who converts, or an eved that is freed if he's believed to testify about things that he saw in his previous state. So the brisa says that the opinion of the Tanakama is that only a child who grew up is trusted, and he's trusted about the following things. We have a list here. He's trusted to say that the following family is tahar, the following family is tameh. The Gemara interjects, it doesn't mean tameh and tahar. What does that mean, that a family is tameh and tahar? But it means to say that they're kosher or puzzle to marry into. This child is also believed to say that we ate at the kitzatza of the daughter of one man who married someone. The Gemara explains kitzatza is when a person marries a woman who's inappropriate for him. It's not a kosher marriage. So the brothers come and they take a barrel full of fruits and they break it in the middle of the street and they make an announcement. They say, we're doing this so that everybody should know that this marriage is inappropriate, and we don't want people to confuse their children with our children. Remember this event, that their children are separate. Anyway, so someone could say that I ate from those fruits, and therefore I'm testifying to the fact that the brothers made that statement against their sister-in-law. Now, child's also believed to say that I remember my father sent me with matnas kahuna to someone, the challah or the other things that are given to kohanim. He sent them with me to someone. He's not testified if he says I saw someone else take them, but if he says I myself brought them, then he is believed. Now, does this apply to an akum who converts or a eved who is freed? So the Tanakama says no, and Rabbi Yechanan ben Breika says yes. The Gemara explains what is a machlokas about. Machlokas is about there is no trustworthiness on an akum. Why should he be paying attention to what he's doing? Or an eved also, why should he be paying attention to what's happening? So the Tanakama says he's not trusted because he's not interested, and therefore he doesn't know what he saw. Rabbi Yechanan ben Breika says, however, since he's converting, he's planning on converting, therefore he is paying attention to what he saw because he is a upcoming convert. Now, the Mishnah concludes, and it says that even where someone is believed, they're not believed to say anything which takes money away from people, so they can't be believed to say that somebody had a certain pathway that he owned, or that a place where he stopped and he said hespedim.